Well, welcome to another Workshop Wednesday brought to you by schoolofbookkeeping.com, where it's casual conversations for serious workflows. And today begins another segment. I'm not quite sure what the word is, but series. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. Where we're going to start a series on e-commerce fundamentals. And we have a guest joining us. As you may notice, Carrie looks a little different today. We actually have Rachel. How do you pronounce your last name? Is it Douchy or?
Douchy. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just didn't want to butcher it. And of course, I get something stuck in my head, and I always say it the wrong way. So,
Oh, you'd be surprised what people have said.
ah,
But
gotcha.
it's Douchy.
Got it. So, Rachel and I have had actually Rachel is an elite school bookkeeping member where she takes advantage of the quick answers options, and we've been chatting about her business and how she does her thing, and you're actually focused on e-commerce and that sort of thing, and tell us a little bit about your company, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So my company grew into this e-commerce niche, although it's not just e-commerce, it's really anybody that's manufacturing stuff or buying and selling stuff, and not necessarily just on an e-com channel, but all of my clients usually are selling on an e-com channel, but they're usually a combination of some kind of brick and mortar store and e-commerce channel, usually wholesaling and that kind of stuff. So rather than service-based folks, all of my people sell stuff.
Stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have a concept as far as inventory is concerned, and we've done previous workshops about managing inventory inside of QuickBooks, and it varies in various different levels of complexity. Where I buy stuff and I sell stuff, I buy stuff, I do stuff to that stuff, and then I sell different stuff, and then I have stuff all over the place that I need to manage. So,
Yeah.
where do you fall in the spectrum there with most of your clients, or is it just a mixture of all of
Well,
those?
it really, I always hate giving this answer. It depends, but it really does depend because when I first started in QuickBooks Online, and I had been a QuickBooks desktop user before, along with many other accounting softwares, I jumped on QuickBooks Online about 5 years ago. And a lot of people would say, you just can't manage inventory on QuickBooks Online. And for me, I was like, well, but why? I want to know
Yeah.
all of the reasons why. So now, of course, I know you can manage inventory in QuickBooks Online. It's very limited. There are certain things that you can do and you can't do. And I'm sure we'll probably get into that, like you had just brought up. You make stuff, you sell stuff, there's a combination of stuff. So in certain situations, I do think that it's okay to manage inventory in QuickBooks Online. It really depends on what they're selling, how they're selling it, and maybe they have kits or assemblies or that kind of thing. Just kind of what's going on with all of their things. And if it's a simple enough scenario, I do think that you can do it in QuickBooks Online. So it really just depends. I always make sure when I'm onboarding a new client or I'm doing some kind of discovery call, I really, really get involved in what they're selling. I don't just ask the accounting questions. I ask, what are they selling? What are they making? What are they making? Are they importing? I really need to know the nuts and bolts of what their business is.
Right, because ultimately that's going to guide your recommendation as to where
Oh,
they live
absolutely.
with all of that
Yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah. And I also am a cloud-based inventory partner with a few different solutions. And so if it's not appropriate to do their inventory in QuickBooks Online, then, I can recommend something else. So I really need to ask in-depth questions about that.
Right. Now, your name of your company is Net Deposited. Can you talk about the origin story of where that came from, and because it does kind of ring true with some of the things that we've done in the past here about the dangers of living in the bank feed
Yeah.
to manage your business. But talk a little bit about
Yeah.
your
So it's
origin.
actually really embarrassing because I had a client maybe my first year that I started, and I wasn't used to the bank feeds because I was used to other accounting softwares where we didn't really use that. So I really didn't know how to use the bank feeds properly. And the way I ended up learning was I accepted everything and then had to undo it and redo it like a whole bunch of times. But I had one client that I just deposited everything straight to sales, and I didn't know any different. And so after a while, I realized, oh, this isn't matching his reporting, because he was a franchise client and he had a big central thing where he would get his reporting. And
Right.
so I was like, what's going on here? And I had to figure out exactly what I was doing. And I think, by the way, that's a really great way to learn, is make the mistake, fix it, and then,
Right.
you,
Get burnt.
now you won't ever make that mistake again. He was actually quite upset, and he actually dumped me as a bookkeeper.
Oh,
And yeah, and I am fine with it because I, moved on. He found somebody that would do it properly for him, and I don't blame him. I just didn't know. And so, oh, I learned my lesson quick. And now when I do diagnostic reviews, that's the first thing I look at. And I see, are they depositing straight to income? Because obviously now we know, well, not obviously, but now we know, and this is something
you
that
know.
I aim to make sure that I want to help and encourage other
Right.
people, but that those deposits that are coming in are just simply payouts. That's cash payouts, and cash isn't
Right.
revenue, obviously.
Right.
So it's really important that you post your sale correctly, either through a sales receipt, or sometimes we do a consolidated journal entry for the day. But
Right.
then what's coming in the bank feed after the fact is your net deposit. And oftentimes it's batched, and sometimes you have to investigate and find out, what's in that deposit. But depending on what kind of connector you're using. But really, that's sort of the gist. And I thought it was kind of a funny name
Right.
because it's so important, but it was something that I screwed up, and I learned my lesson about that. And so now it's really something that a lot of business owners make that mistake, and they also create a rule. They create a
Right.
rule straight to income, and I always, every time I see that, I cringe a little bit. But
Right. But they don't know what they don't know,
right.
and that's they run their business from the balance of the bank account, right,
Yeah, and so it's
and
not
make some
capturing
decisions.
everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not capturing fees. It's certainly not capturing any kind of chargebacks or discounts or allowances or any other thing that's part of their daily sale.
Right. And that's kind of what we're going to unpack a little bit as we go through this series. So just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about what it is that we are going to cover and unpack over the next. I think you're with us for like 8 weeks, Rachel. So we'll get to know a lot about each other. And this side of things. So today is really just about an overview. What are we going to be covering over the next 8 weeks, because there's several major concepts when it comes to e-commerce and e-commerce accounting that we just want to kind of give the Mr. Rogers level of those types of things, and that's why we have Rachel as our resident expert to kind of give us a little keep us. My job is to keep us from getting into the weeds, because that can certainly happen. Um, and we would just want to talk about some of those things. And I did a QuickBooks Power Hour a couple years ago with Veronica Wasik. She's also in the e-commerce
Super
space,
knowledgeable. Yeah, she's amazing.
and so we're going to put that as a link there, so as a good introductory to kind of what we're going to be unpacking. But so today is all about what is e-commerce, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but we'll also be talking about sales tax implications and tracking sales tax, the components that you kind of need to be able to do e-commerce, selling stuff online, and then what kind of tech stack kind of works best, and we'll kind of unpack that with Rachel as far as some of those things that you discover in the discovery. Well, maybe you might have different recommendations for that. and those types of things. And then, as you mentioned, inventory, right? So tracking the inventory. How do the clients, what kind of level of complexity do they have with their inventory? And then one thing that is unique about e-commerce is fulfillment, right? So you get an order, and then you got to send it somewhere, right? So so that is another unique component. So we'll kind of unpack all of those things over the next few weeks. But first, we just want to kind of talk about, well, what is e-commerce in general? Like, if somebody asks you, Rachel, and I am, what is e-commerce? What would you say in layman's terms, so that they understand what you're talking about with e-commerce? I get the first question is, how do you spell it, right? Because you've got e-commerce, you've got capital C commerce, and then you have no dash. How do you
I know.
spell
And then and it really just depends, because sometimes I write articles for the Woodard Report too. And I think, wait, should I put the dash? Should I not put the dash? I don't know. Sometimes if I'm typing quickly, I won't put the dash, but I do think
Right.
technically it's capital E dash commerce. But so it's a little bit of a misnomer, because it's not just e-commerce. So really, in the platform world, when you're selling on marketplaces or platforms, e-commerce is really just referring to those sales that you're selling on a marketplace or on a platform like Shopify. Well, it's more than that, because I have people in brick and mortar stores that are selling. So I usually say well, there's a connector that I use, a really amazing company called Bookkeep, and the owner always says everything is e-commerce. And it's true. I
Mhm.
really believe that, because I think what we're talking about really is point of sale. So there's the folks that are, oh, Emily's here. Hi, Emily. There's the folks that are sending out invoices. I'm sending you an invoice, you pay me later, right? So, and that's accounts receivable. I'm giving you terms, I'm allowing you to pay me later. Well, that's not what's going on when you're selling on a website, or you're selling, credit card swipe in a store, or maybe you're out at a flea market or farmer's market. I have clients that use Square, and they'll use that out in the field, or they've got sales reps out in the field that are swiping sales on Square. And so sorry, I have a gnat. There are, I usually refer, when we say e-com, I usually refer to those point of sale purchases that need to come into QuickBooks. And we're talking about a payout that's coming 1, 2, 3, 4, sometimes in Amazon's case, 2 weeks after the fact. So what we want to do is we want to post those sales on an accrual basis properly, so we can capture the day that the sale incurred. So that way they're jiving with the sales reports in whatever platform you're selling on. And if you're just maybe selling in person, maybe that's just Stripe, or maybe that's just Square. So rather than really relying on QuickBooks Online for your gross sales, we're dealing with some other kind of external platform. And so for my clients, they really want to understand and be reassured that what we're posting in QuickBooks Online is what they're saying on their sales platform. And on an accrual basis is really important, especially at month end and at year end, because
Yeah.
I have a client that's very high volume. And if we were just relying on payouts, I mean, that would be a variance of $75,000. So we really want to post those sales properly. And then the payout will come several days after the fact. And, now I deal with so many of them. Some come the next day, some take 2, 3, 4,
Right.
quite a while to pay out. So, and when we say e-commerce, I really mean, and this is just such a growing industry, point of sale, really.
So a way to sell your merchandise that isn't necessarily right out of QuickBooks.
Yeah. And then guess what? I also have clients that are now selling subscription memberships and digital downloads and things like that. So it's not always stuff, because that's another thing, as I usually say, my clients sell stuff and they're moving product, but guess what? Now there's point of sale swipes for not stuff. So it's
Right.
really, it can get a little complex, but it's
Yeah.
I usually say once you're doing it for a while, it's definitely doable. I think some people
Right.
shy away from it because maybe they're not super
Well,
fond of inventory, but there's a lot of parts of it that don't even necessarily involve inventory.
right. And you can come up with an engagement where you kind of steer clear of that.
Hmm.
If that's not, in your wheelhouse, you just, manage the financial impact. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Emily from Bookkeep actually let us know that according to AP style, the correct spelling of e-commerce is capital E dash capital C commerce. So if nothing else, at least how to spell e-commerce now.
Thanks, Emily.
And you mentioned Bookkeep, and Emily is with Bookkeep. Um, so you actually had a case study written about you from Bookkeep, which is really awesome. So if you it's in the or it's in the chat or in the comments there as a link. So if you want to check out, that case study about you, please do. And we'll talk about, what Bookkeep is when we get to the components and those types of things. So as you make those decisions with how you engage with your e-commerce clients. But that's right. Oh, that's right. Emily is no longer with Bookkeep. She used to be with Bookkeep. That's why. So I can make that connection with that. But that's right. Um, so we will we'll be so there's you're talking about a point of sale as lumping in what e-commerce is, and some of those brick and mortar stores, like you mentioned, they'll be able to sell online. I remember Google had a service called Frugal back in the
Oh,
day, which
I don't know
was
that.
it's basically what it was, like a product listing service for brick and mortar stores, right? They could list their products online, and then people could say, "Hey, I want that," and then go pick it up in the store. Like before I mean, today it's very commonplace. Like I buy online, pick up in the store, but it was called Frugal, Froogl, um, as opposed to just Googling. Like I want to be able to buy online or shop online, but pick it up locally. This is before COVID. This is like 2006 type of thing. But
Oh, you
so
mean the
it's
olden days?
yeah. Dating myself. Um, and then there's all sorts of things, and we'll unpack the differences between a shopping cart and a marketplace. But there are those things, and let's talk a little bit about those types of things where it's a marketplace, which is online, which is our probably the most common and everybody understands it, is
Hmm.
Amazon.
Yes.
Amazon's a marketplace. It's not
Yes.
necessarily a shopping cart. So can you talk a little bit about the difference between a shopping cart and in a marketplace?
Sure. So I'm so excited. I just got a client that is a marketplace. And it was really interesting because she came to me and I had never taken a client that was a marketplace before, but because I have so much experience with other marketplaces, I really understood how to speak her language and what to do. So essentially, a marketplace is a place online where people can go and post their stuff to sell. So the most popular one is Amazon. So Amazon is there's a couple parts to Amazon. They have fulfilled by Amazon, meaning your vendors
But
are just selling their
we'll
stuff.
talk
Oh, okay.
about
Well, we'll get. Sorry, sometimes I'll get too
get
into the
into the
nitty gritty.
weeds. Hold on.
Yeah, I know sometimes I do that, but yeah. So anyway, Amazon is just basically a marketplace where a whole bunch of people come together, sell their stuff. Etsy is another marketplace. Wayfair is another marketplace like that.
Walmart.
And then did
Uh,
you want me to say the opposite of that, which would
right.
be like a
Right.
sales
So
platform?
exactly.
So and then I'll say the big difference between the two. So and then a
Right.
sales platform is you're using a platform like Shopify or WooCommerce or
Right.
something like that, and it is your website. So customers are going onto your website, buying things directly from you. So the main difference is on a marketplace, they're a facilitator with sales tax. So they take care of your sales tax obligation. So they collect the sales tax from the buyer and then they remit it to the appropriate state and file the return. With your own website on your own platform, you are responsible for figuring out the sales tax liability. And that's we'll kind of stay at that high level, but that's that main difference.
If I was going to put the analogy to all this, I would say that the difference between those two platforms is a yard sale versus a swap meet, right? So if you have stuff that you want to sell, get rid of your junk, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have an option. You can do a yard sale, garage sale type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine, right? You just have to deal with the marketing of that. You letting people know that you're having a yard sale, putting out signs and that sort of thing. Or you could schlep all your stuff and go down to a swap meet, or someplace where, sorry, I got a little excited there. You go down to a place where a bunch of other people are bringing their junk to sell. And then you don't have to worry about marketing, right? Because there is already going to be a serious amount of foot traffic.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, you have to deal with, well, how do you stand out, in that marketplace so that you attract people to that? But you're going to have a bunch of people already there at the marketplace, right? And that's what Amazon does. That's what Etsy does. That's
Mm-hmm.
what all of those other people are already going to those places because they know they exist. Whereas if you have a garage sale or yard sale, they may not know that unless they are actively looking for an individual yard sale or garage sale to buy somebody else's junk.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. And those website owners, they have to market all on their own through
Right.
Google, through, all kinds of different marketing endeavors. And I have clients that they use all kinds of different techniques, and I'm no marketing expert at all. So it's interesting because I watch how they do it. And then on, something like Amazon, like you said, it's got tons and tons of other sellers, and you have to somehow get to the top of that list. And that comes from buying. You buy advertising from them and you buy
Right.
placement from them. So you're spending a lot of money to be on something like Amazon, but sometimes it can be well worth it.
Right.
Just depends.
Because, I don't think there is a human alive that doesn't know about Amazon. Right. I mean, they're very good at marketing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they're quite, when your company is a verb to people, right? Like, I'm going to Google it, or I'm going to Amazon it, or
Oh yeah,
I'm going to
yeah.
YouTube it. That is like when you're
Or
in
Venmo. I'm
you're
going to
in
Venmo you. Yeah.
exactly.
It's so
You
funny how
are
those have just completely become language.
right. It's now part of your part of the vernacular,
Yeah.
right? So that's what you're in for over the next 6 or 8 weeks here, as we kind of unpack the different things about what e-commerce is, and how can you help your clients or help yourself if you're a business needing to do some e-commerce and spreading the diversifying how you sell things, because if anything that COVID has taught us is that you cannot have all of your eggs in one basket, especially if you're a retail store. To be reliant on people coming into your place of business to buy your stuff, right? So, e-commerce was the yesterday's or the tomorrow's conversation that got put into today, probably because of COVID and those types of things. So people who weren't set up for e-commerce were definitely impacted pretty substantially by that period of time. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, I
Rachel?
mean, not even that, but then take into account all, how many of us are always on our phones and how many potential customers are always on their phone, logged in to PayPal on their browser or already logged into Apple Pay. And so, there's these really creative sellers that are taking advantage of those things that, people can instant buy. So that's not even, I have to because of COVID. It's now how creative can I get, because I want to sell on all these different channels and there's all these creative ways to do it that, I mean, some of my clients, there's payment methods coming in from all over the place.
Yeah, we'll get into those weeds when we talk about how do you do the accounting side of all that. But I appreciate you joining us here today, Rachel, and we look forward to working through these topics on the workshop. And appreciate all of you joining us. I see a lot of the engagement here. I like that. Great ad, analogy. Right. So hopefully you join us in the coming weeks as we unpack the e-commerce fundamentals. And appreciate you having us or joining us here today, Rachel. Any closing thoughts from you?
No, other than I'm happy to be here. I love e-commerce so much. It's truly one of those things where I get excited to get up and come to my desk in the morning, because the reason that I really like e-commerce or point of sale selling is because I just like the different things everybody sells. I really like the industry. I like learning about their background and why they're selling the way they're selling. I find it very interesting. And I just really enjoy it.
All right. Well, for those of you that run screaming from all of these things, you now have a resource to be able to work with. Maybe hand off a client if you don't want to deal with the e-commerce with Rachel. So we look forward to seeing you next week, and we'll continue this topic next time. Have a great day.